Welcome back, everyone. My name is Michelle, and this is Horror Book Hell Hound. So as you can guess by today's title, I'm basically going to be doing a very quick review with you guys of all the books that I read in 2022. I managed to actually reach my goal, which I think was like 55 books, somewhere in there. I thought it was going to be so much more difficult than it was. And then a lot of my friends on Goodreads just completely destroyed me, and they were like sitting at 200 to 300 books in a year. I don't know what kind of determination and focus you have to be able to do that, but kudos for them. So with this review, I'm basically just going to start listing off books, and I'm going to tell you, I'm literally looking at my Goodreads list and my rankings and all of the awesomeness. So if it seems like I'm looking down a lot, that is why. But we're going to start from the very beginning of last year in January, what I read first, and that was Sister Fun Time by Spencer Hamilton. So this was one of those books that you see when you're scrolling Bookstagram and you are just happen to be friends on there or following the author. Yeah, I would like to think that we're friends, but pretty much I was just stalking his whole life, like I do with most horror authors, if we're just being honest. That is neither here nor there. Sister Fun Time, I ranked 5 out of 5 stars. 5 out of 5. It's a very short little book. I have all of these books in hardback copy. I just honestly did not feel like digging out 50 plus books from all the different places that they have ended up. So we're just going to do the pictures, okay? But Sister Fun Time was legitimately a fun time. You have gore, you have potential demonic possession going on, but you also have like a whole different scenario of like psychological horror that I did not see coming. It was fun. It was fantastic. I will always recommend that book. I ended up getting an author signed copy at one point, so I don't remember if I did a giveaway on the other one or not, but I do apparently have 2 copies floating around somewhere. Next up, I read The Abominable by Dan Simmons, and let me tell you, that was a chunky fucking book. Apparently it was only 663 pages, but Jesus Christ. Yeah, that one was a little bit of a letdown. I ranked it 3 out of 5 stars. It was still a really good read. If you were into very like historical, actiony adventure pieces, this is probably right up your alley, because it was definitely there. It was definitely there. It was not a bad story, it just wasn't what I wanted. Next up, I read The Lost Village by Camilla Sten. A lot of people were either love or hate with this book. I was kind of middle of the road with it, to be honest with you. I gave it 3 out of 5 stars. I thought it was entertaining. I thought it was somewhat unique. But it wasn't like the end-all be-all, and honestly, I have forgotten a lot of it, so I guess in the end it was a little bit on the forgettable side, just for me personally. Reminder, these are all just my opinions. Take them for what they're worth. You can have your own opinion and completely disagree. That is all okay. Next up, I read a little ditty called Sin by Patrick Ruman. I want to say that's how you say his last name. I hated this book. I know hate is a strong word, but like I strongly disliked this book. I only gave it a 2 out of 5 stars just because, what the fuck? There was like a pretty intriguing twist in the story, which is why it didn't get just a flat out 1 star, if not no stars. But that one little twist was not enough to save it for me. It was very annoying. The 2 lead characters were so goddamn annoying. And just the way they spoke, the way they acted, everything, that I just, even when the twist came, it just wasn't good enough to save it for me. I could not stand those characters. But again, it's a very short little piece, only 88 pages, so there's that. Next up was Cold the Night, Fast the Wolves by Meg Long. This one was so interesting, you guys. It was not my typical horror novel. Back to fantasy. This book is more of like a fantasy YA feel to it, but I really enjoyed it. I love anything to do with wolves, if we're just going to be 100% honest with that. But it was wonderful. It was very good. I think there were like a couple of grammar mistakes here and there that were like irking me, because y'all know that's like a big pet peeve of mine for some reason. And I'm not talking about like little forgettable grammar mistakes. I'm talking about like there were entire words missing that should have been in the sentence to make it make sense. But still love it. We'll always keep this book. We'll definitely reread it in the future. It was awesome. Next up, I managed to read Why We Love Serial Killers by Scott A. Bond. I love true crime. I don't read a lot of it anymore. I went through a deep, hardcore obsession with all true crime, especially books like this. So it kind of burned me out for a long time after that, and I just didn't want to read it. But this one was wonderful. I gave it a 5 out of 5. It was very interesting. If you're into like learning how the killer crazies function, and how people can get that way and sort of function. I don't really know if you would call that functioning, Michelle. I don't really think, killing and eating people is considered functioning, but you know what I mean. Next up was Her Soul to Take by Harley LaRue. Is it LaRue or LaRue? I think it's LaRue. I gave this book 4 out of 5 stars, but there's not much wrong with it. Like, I honestly don't know why I didn't give it 5 out of 5 stars. This was back in February of last year when I ranked it. I loved it. Definitely delicious monster porn right there. It is part of a series. I do have the second book in the series. I just honestly have not gotten around to reading it. So I definitely like rethinking back on that book and how good it was. That was one of those monster smut books that really had some horror elements in it that I really enjoyed and I was not expecting. Her Soul to Take was definitely one to read if you are wanting some spice without just being bored to tears. Next up, I read a short story collection called Dead of Winter by Keelan Patrick Burke. I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. It was definitely good. I rarely ever give short story collections 5 out of 5 stars because there's always at least one story in there that I just can't stand. Like, there's always one. Except for a book that we'll be talking about shortly. Next up, I read The Cases That Haunt Us by John E. Douglas and Mark Olshaker, whatever the fuck that name is. I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. It was a little long-winded. It was a little on the boring side, if we're just being 100% honest. But if you are as fanatically obsessed with true crime cases as I am, from a psychological perspective, this book would definitely intrigue you, I feel. Speaking of the one and only short story collection that I loved every single story, Black Tongue and Other Anomalies by Richard Beaucamp, which was, I mentioned it in my last video. For some reason, I still only gave it 4 out of 5 stars. I need to go in and fix that because it's definitely a 5 out of 5. Definitely a 5 out of 5. Like, this is the one short story collection that a year later, and I still remember pretty much every story very vividly. I remember wanting so much more from a lot of those stories. I wanted like full-blown novels, TV shows, everything, just from some of these very short stories. So I was definitely blown away by that book. Next book, A Darling Obsession by S.R. Murray. Now, Mr. Murray actually hit me up on Instagram and was asking me if I would do a review for his book. I said, of course. This book was very fucking disturbing. Okay, the way it was written was very disturbing. Not hating on you, Mr. Murray. I love it. Don't get me wrong. I love the disturbingness. I only ranked it 3 out of 5 stars just because like the entire story itself, even though it was based off of a real life event or person or what have you, it just really wasn't my thing. Next up, we have Stolen Tongues by Felix Blackwell. I loved this book, you guys. Like, I gave it a 4 out of 5 stars. I know at the time, this time last year, a lot of people were either I love it or I hate it. And the first part of the book was the best, in my opinion. It got a little repetitive after a while, but the first part of the book, like let's say the first 100 pages or so, wonderful. Just wonderful. The next two back to back were Ice Planet Barbarians and Barbarian Alien by Ruby Dixon. Oh my god. I hopped on this bandwagon so fast. And I'm not like, this was probably priming me for the rest of the year of like deep diving into actual monster erotica. Because I had, you know, a few tastes of it here and there, but I wasn't like a hardcore monster fucker until after these books. Okay. But it's fun. It is a fun plot line. It's nothing super duper heavy that you have to like sit there and remember and think about and like that fucks with your head at all. It's just fun. I love this series. I don't care. I gave both books a 4 out of 5 star rating. They're just fucking fun. Okay, that's all I'm gonna say. Next up, after those two, I decided to do something crazy and read The Never King by Nikki St. Crow. This was the first book I had ever read that had a reverse harem trope in it. And at first I was like, ugh, not my thing. Ugh, I just don't really like it. It's not really my thing, you know? Just don't really. And then it was like, shut up, Michelle. We're gonna read it. I blame Book Talk, but you know, I only gave The Never King a 3 out of 5 stars at the time because at the time I was so convinced that this was not my thing. And you know, we see how that went. Then I read a gem of a book, an absolute gem of a book called His Darkest Craving by Tiffany Roberts. I talk about this book in more detail in the last video that I did. So go over there if you want to hear more about it. But it was wonderful. I gave it a 4 out of 5 stars. After His Darkest Craving, I read Horror Hotel by Victoria Fulton and Faith McLaren. It was a fun little book. It was more so like along the YA lines, but there were some moments that felt more like adult horror, and I loved it. I gave it a 3 out of 5. I'll probably never read it again, but it was fun. It was definitely fun. Then I finally was able to read Ruin and Rising by Leigh Bardugo, or is it Lee? Leigh Bardugo. Finally got around to reading that book. I gave it a 4 out of 5. It was pretty freaking decent. I enjoyed it. Next up, we had Out Behind the Barn by John Bowden and Chad Lutzk, I think is how you say his name. I gave that book a 3 out of 5 stars. It just really wasn't my thing. It just really wasn't. But anyway. Then I got around to reading Demonic Foes by Richard Gallagher. I gave it a 3 out of 5 because in essence this was a book that I should have loved. It should have been an easy 5 out of 5. But the author was very preachy at times, and that just kind of gets to me after a while. So we gave it a nice even 3 out of 5. Oh, then we read Satan's Affair. I don't know why I keep saying we. Like, I don't have schizophrenia, do I? Then we read Satan's Affair by H.D. Carlton. I gave it a 3 out of 5 because, again, reverse harem tropes are not my fucking thing. And this one just kind of went a little bit over the line. This book made me put reading Haunting Adeline off because I was worried that book was going to be along the same lines. And I was just like not feeling it, if that makes sense. I was wrong, obviously. Then I read Dark Desire by Christine Feehan. I give pretty much all of her books a solid 4 out of 5 stars because I love like pretty much every fucking book in the Carpathian series. Like, they are all wonderful. It's an older paranormal romance series that just less spice, more romance, more plot, and I love it. Then I read The Grin in the Dark by J.A. Dark. It's part of the Spine Shivers little series. It's kind of like a YA Goosebumps type feel to it. It wasn't really my thing, but I did enjoy it. It's very short. It was only like 128 pages. So I gave it a 3 out of 5 just because it was pretty decent. Next up, I read Sister of Darkness, The Chronicles of a Modern Exorcist by R.H. Stavis and Sarah Durand. That book was really fucking interesting. It came from the perspective of a female modern exorcist that was outside of like the strict Christian/Catholic mindset, and it was fucking awesome. So I gave it a 4 out of 5. Then I read Theme Music by T. Marie Vandely. I only gave this book a 3 out of 5. A lot of people absolutely loved it. Some hated it. I was just kind of middle of the road with it. I thought it was a fun time, but I didn't just like super duper enjoy it, if that makes sense. Then I read All These Subtle Deceits by C.S. Humble, and this had been a book that I had been waiting on for a while, and I loved it. Like, I gave it a 4 out of 5. There were parts that weren't like really hitting with me, weren't really meshing all that well. It was a very short book. It's not even 200 pages long. But from what I gather, C.S. Humble is going to be continuing a book series, this particular series, with these particular characters, or at least in the same world. And I'm very excited for that. I think they will continue to get better, is my prediction, but we shall see. Next up, I read Dark Gold by Christine Feehan. Yes, I'm still slowly making my way through that series. Again, 4 out of 5. Easy peasy. Ooh, then I read Till We Become Monsters by Amanda Headley. I mentioned this book in my last video. I gave it a 4 out of 5, but it would have been an easy 5 out of 5 if it weren't for quite a few grammar issues with the book. The storyline, the characters, the way it was written, the concept, 5 out of 5. All of it. All of it. Wonderful book if you like short, punch you in the gut type of horror novels. This is a book for you. Then I read The Hellbound Volume 1. I'm not even going to try to say these authors' names because I just feel like I would disrespect them by even trying at this point. I gave this a 4 out of 5. I know it is not considered a manga because it is, I believe, Korean. Volume 2 is already out. I just haven't gotten it yet. Okay, so then I read The Patient by Jasper DeWitt. I gave that book a 5 out of 5. Yes, I loved it. It's pretty short. It's less than 300 pages, but it packs a hell of a punch, and it kind of gives you these demonic possession vibes, but it also comes at things from like a forensic psych stance. It is all a fictional story, of course, but I loved it. Not gonna lie. That was a great one. I will definitely recommend it. And the one I read right after that was also a 5-star read, and that was Goddess of Filth by V. Castro. This book made me cry. Like, this book had moments of just like sheer beautiful feminine empowerment. And why, like, when you read the blurb about this book and you hear other people talk about it, you assume it's like a straight up demonic possession type story. In reality, it is something so far beyond that. I highly recommend you check it out because damn. Next up, I read Near the Bone by Christina Henry, and I gave it a solid 4 out of 5. I almost said 3. No, check yourself. 4 out of 5. A lot of people can't stand this book. I don't really understand why they can't stand it because I loved it. Like, there were people saying that like where the monster was. I'm like, bitch, the monster's in this book. Like, you get a nice bit of gory monster creature feature in this book, in my opinion, but it is what it is. I liked it. Then I read Dark Magic by Christine Feehan. This is probably one of the few books in her series, the Carpathian series, that I only gave a 3 out of 5 stars, and that is because every 5 goddamn sentences or so they have to talk about Gregory, our lead male character's eyes. Moving right along. Then we read Satan's Harvest by Ed and Lorraine Warren. This book irked my soul. I have read other Ed and Lorraine Warren books before. I don't really have a point of view on the whole, like, whether or not they were complete liars or not stance. I don't really care. I just enjoyed their books, and I enjoyed like reading about their real life investigations. But this one in particular just seemed hella disrespectful to the people in the book and the people that had passed away. Anyway, next up I read Below by Laurel Hightower. Everyone kept raving about this book. I gave it a 3 out of 5. It was interesting. It was unique, but it was so not my thing for some reason. Like, I don't know if maybe it was just at the time I was not in the best of mindsets or what, but I was not feeling this book. Then I read A Kingdom of Ruin by K.F. Breen. It is part of a series now. I thought it was just going to be a trilogy, but here we are with a series, and I have yet to read the newest one that's out. I gave it a 4 out of 5. Definitely enjoy this series. It's very spicy. Very spicy. So be prepared if you dive down that rabbit hole. Then I read The Haunting of Lee Harker by Darcy Coates. This one just really wasn't for me, so I gave it a 3 out of 5. But Darcy Coates' work as a whole, I love her work. This one, just for whatever reason, didn't sit with me well. Then I read The Ancient Magus Bride, Volume 1 by Kori Yamazaki. I gave it a 4 out of 5. I ain't gonna lie, I watched the anime before I ever even realized that it was a whole ass manga. So now I'm slowly but surely collecting the entire manga series. So there's that. Then I started a new manga series called The Wolf Never Sleeps, Volume 1. Sheehan Bishop? Is that how you say this? Sheehan Bishop? I don't know. Gave it a 4 out of 5. Some of the dialogue in the manga is a little like subpar. Maybe that's some of the translation. I don't know. But the artwork is badass. And I'm enjoying just like the storyline as a whole and the main characters. So I'm going to keep going with it. Then I read The Cold Vanish, Seeking the Missing in North America's Wildlands by John Billman. I gave it a 4 out of 5. This one was fucking good, you guys. It's normally not the type of thing I would read. Like, yes, I love true crime, and it kind of felt a little bit like true crime, but it really wasn't something I would normally go for. Fucking loved it, though. Had a difficult time putting this one down. Then I read The Slender Man by Dexter Morgenstern. This is a fictional piece. I do have another book about Slender Man that's more of a true crime type or like nonfiction piece that I do plan on reading at some point this year. So I'll be sure to let you guys know about that. This one was more like a YA thing. Like, it was cool. It was all right, but I just gave it a 3 out of 5. Then Mike X Welch sent me, what is it called? Enantiodromia. Say that 3 times fast. One of his short story collections. I hate to say it because I read this back in July of last year, but I really don't remember much of it. I don't know if I was reading it in a rush or if it was just super, super short. I gave it a solid 3 out of 5 stars, but I'm going to have to go back and read it because I still have it, of course. I need to go back and reread it, though, because I don't know if maybe just at the time I wasn't giving it the attention it deserved or what. But then my stupid ass decided to waste time reading Jaws by Peter Benchley. I gave it a 2 out of 5 stars, just for the first half of the book, for the first and like very last half sections, because I still love Jaws so fucking much. And I know that without the book, having been there, I would not have the beautiful, amazing, other than Jaws 3, franchise that I love to binge watch just like literally any time of the year. So it gets a 2 out of 5. And that's just me being polite. Next up, I read The 7 Visitations of Sidney Burgess by Andy Marino. I also mentioned this book in the last video I did, so if you want to hear more about it, check it out there. Gave it a 4 out of 5 stars. Then I read Beasts and Beauty by Salman Chainani and Julia Iredale. I gave it a 3 out of 5. It was more of like a short story collection, but all the short stories were retellings of like famous fables and fantasies and stuff like that. I didn't like the way they were retold most of the time. It was just kind of like meh. So there's that. Then I read Dark Challenge by Christine Feehan. Again, we have a solid 4 out of 5 stars. Then I read How to Be Eaten by Maria Adelman. That one was interesting. I gave it a 4 out of 5 just for like the plot, because it is kind of a retelling of different fantasy stories, but it's in such a way that it kind of combines them into one story, and I really enjoyed it. Then I read Hunted by Darcy Coates. 5 out of 5 immediately, just out of the blue, like 5 out of 5. 5 out of 5. Fight me. That book is probably, okay, I haven't read all of Darcy's works, but that book is definitely up there for me. It is up there all the way. Then I read Anoka by Shane Hawk. I gave it 3 out of 5 stars. It is also a short story collection. There's definitely more of a Native American cultural twist to these stories, obviously. And I really enjoyed them. Although, if this is, oh my god, was this the collection that had the fucker that had the spider in his ear? Because no, I will never reread it just for that. just for that. Just for that. Then I had the lovely experience of reading Sundial by Catriona Ward. For some reason, I only gave it 4 out of 5 stars, which I feel like I need to change, because to me that was a 5-star read. Like, what I remember from the book, amazing. Then I read Lore Olympus Volume 2. Solid 4 out of 5 stars. Loved it. Will always love it. Love everything about it. Love Rachel Smith. Your work is beautiful. Keep going. Please keep going, because without it, I might wither and die. Then I read The Screwtape Letters by C.S. Lewis. I definitely gave it a 4 out of 5 stars. This book was a little difficult. Like, it's very dry. It's very boring at times. But if you sit back and really, like, conceptually understand what Mr. C.S. Lewis is trying to tell Christian folk through this book, as a non-Christian, you just kind of sit over there and laugh and giggle and just wish the Christians would reread it, because it's like, what the fuck are y'all doing? Anyway, next up, I read Dark Fire by Christine Feehan. Again, part of the Carpathian series. 4 out of 5, obviously. Then was The Dark One. And for some reason, I only gave that one a 3 out of 5 stars, too. I don't know. Maybe I was just being a bitch that day. But that one was spicy. Then I read Meat by Dane Cobain. That was a definitely unique and disturbing read. If you enjoy strange takes on zombies, that might be a good one for you to read. I gave it a 4 out of 5. Then I read A Soul to Keep by Miss Opal Rain, and I gave it a 4 out of 5 only because there were a few grammatical errors that kicked off my pet peeve. But the storyline, the characters, everything else about it, easy 5 out of 5. Loved it. Monster smut to the extreme? Yes. But you get some romance, you get some quirkiness, you get some kick-ass characters, and a plot. And a plot. With monster dick? Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Then I read The Exorcist's House by Nick Roberts, because everyone on Book Talk was saying how disturbing it was, and this is the best demonic possession book I've ever read. Y'all lied to me, and you owe me money. I gave it a 3 out of 5. Then I actually read a self-help book, because why not? I read Codependent No More by Melody Beattie, I think is how you say it. I gave it a 4 out of 5. Keep in mind, if you go into reading this book, it's written from a Christian perspective, so there will be references to that. But overall, the theories, like what she's trying to say about being codependent and stopping those toxic cycles, spot on. I loved it. Then I immediately ordered and read A Soul to Heal by Miss Opal Rain. That one, 5 out of 5. 5 out of motherfucking 5 stars. Everything from the first one that we know and love. Absolutely no grammatical errors this time around that I could find, that I could notice. I didn't even care if I noticed them, because the story and the characters were so striking and beautiful and wonderful that you just can't help but love it. And if you don't love it, don't talk to me. Anyway. Then I read Such Sharp Teeth by Rachel Harrison, and I fucking loved it. I gave it a 4 out of 5. It's not so much spicy, although there is a little bit of romance there. But it's just such a fun fucking read. If you're looking for like an easy, like a mentally just easy, but also fun and with like tiny little tidbits of horror sprinkled in read, check this one out, because I think you'll like it. Then I read Barbarian Lover by Ruby Dixon, and that one got a 3 out of 5 stars. It's still fun. It's still fun for sure, but it just, that particular one was just kind of a boring story in my opinion. Woo! Then I saddled up and I read Haunting Adeline by H.D. Carlton. 4 out of 5. If you know, you know. That's all I'm going to fucking say about that book. Then I read a book called Destiny by Dee Larson. It is actually the first book in a series, but honestly, it was so YA and not really spicy enough for me to enjoy If that makes sense. That sounds so trashy, but it is what it is. I am who I am. I gave it a 3 out of 5 stars because it is an enjoyable read. It almost felt a little like Twilight-ish. So if you're looking for something along those lines, you might check this series out. Then I read Chosen by a Beast by Miranda Bridges. Very short book, not even 200 pages. It is the beginning of, what is it called? It is the beginning book of the Hearts of Stone series. I actually ordered the second one. So I will be continuing on with the series, even though it wasn't like anything groundbreaking or super jaw-dropping. I just enjoyed it. I just really enjoyed it. I enjoy Monster Dick, all right? Get off me. Then I read Sleeping with the Lights On, The Unsettling Story of Horror by Daryl Jones. I gave it a 4 out of 5. It's a little over 200 pages, so it's not a long read, but I will say this, the language that is used is top tier language. It's written almost like a PhD thesis. I'm wondering if it was a PhD thesis because it's almost written like one. So the language can get a little bit flowery with the big brain words. So just be on your guard about that. If you enjoy that though, hell yeah, I do. I enjoy it. I like finding new words that I can't pronounce or don't even fucking remember what they mean, so then I have to look it up. Anyway, nerd moment. I liked it though. It was pretty cool. Then, last 2 books of the year, I promise you guys. Then I read ACOTAR, A Court of Thorns and Roses by the beautiful Sarah J. Maas. I gave that book a 4 out of 5. I can already tell you right now that I am reading A Court of Mist and Fury, and that book will be getting a 5 out of 5, and I'm not even done with it. So unless something horrible, and don't tell me, unless something horrible happens at the ending, it will be getting a 5 out of 5 stars because I love it so goddamn much. Anyway, I rounded out the year with Red Dragon by Thomas Harris. I gave it a 4 out of 5. It's always been a 4 out of 5 for me. I really enjoy that book, even though it is kind of bland. Like, if you've watched all of the Hannibal movies, if you've seen Red Dragon the movie, if you've watched the Hannibal TV series, that's all you really need. I feel like the book gets a little dry at times, but still fascinating. So that is it, you guys. I'm so sorry. I know this video has been forever long. I will wrap it up here. The next video I'm going to do is just kind of touching base on a TBR for January, although I am not off to a good start already. I am not. Let's just be real. But that's what we'll be doing for our next video, which will probably come out next Tuesday. I'm trying to do Tuesdays and Thursdays for right now until I can get a steadier schedule. But yeah, that is it. What did you guys think? Do you have any opinions on what I read? Did you yourself read any of these books this past year or ever? And what did you think? And I will leave you to it. If you enjoyed today's video, you know what button to hit. The like one. And please subscribe if you haven't already, because like, what are you doing? We don't know. And I will see you all in the next video. Peace out, Hell Hounds.